I'm not gonna bring it up.
Go ahead. What's the wildest thing that
so I was working late it was like 10:30 at night, and like I'm up on a ladder working, and some dude comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, bro, I'm not weird, but like, do you know where the massage parlors are at?" I'm like, "That's the weirdest thing you could ask me right now," and I don't know because I'm here painting a mural at night.
Give me the paint, give me the chalk, give me the urban artist talk. Conversations from the heart, from the start we set apart. Art a la carte, now check it.
I was so excited about this podcast that I actually jumped it a week early and got in contact with our guest and was like, yo, you ready to go? This was last week. And he was like, I can do whenever. And I was just like, oh, snap. Oh, my bad. It's next week. That's how I was excited. I was just ready to go and really just ready to have a conversation. We've worked on a few projects together, way more down the line that I'm looking forward to working on. He's an amazing artist, muralist. He's worked with Modelo. He's worked with the Golden State Warriors. I would like to welcome none other than Matley Herd.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Last week I was like, hey, I'm down to do it whenever. I thought we were doing next week, but I was like, maybe we just got switched up. But
I was just jumping the gun. I was a little excited, but I'm glad to have you here, man. How you feeling?
Me too. I'm feeling good.
Cool.
I like the space. I like the setup. It's really nice, obviously.
Yeah, man. Except for this fly that wants to keep on, having his little 5 seconds of fame.
Special guest.
Yeah, special guest, the fly. But no, this is the space. You've been here before, but we're always transforming it, just set it up so that we can have this podcast and give it a real authentic feel.
For sure.
And Urban Artist Talk, here we are, man.
I love it. I love what you've been doing with the podcast. I've been seeing all the guests you've had on so far, and I'm like, man, I was hoping to be a part of it, but I was like, I'm not going to ask. I'm wait till, Nancy invites me, and I appreciate the invite.
No, man. I mean, I'll be honest. You're one of my favorite artists, and that's where, I was like, man, I really would love to have a sit down with Matley Herd. Your style. Where does your style come from?
It kind of is a culmination of everything I've grown up loving, being into experiences. I grew up, my dad is a huge comic book collector, like hundreds of thousands of comic books. It's crazy. That's his main thing. Mm-hmm. And me and him, really, really connect on that and love it. And so I grew up just strong superheroes, going through the books. Before I could even really read, I was just like, oh, that's a cool image. I could trace it. I could draw it. As I got older, got more like Dragon Ball Z, anime, stuff like that. And I was drawing all that. It's like elementary school. So that's kind of influenced. Getting a little older, got more in graffiti, styling, learning how to paint. First time painting was like middle of high school, 2005, 2006, I think. And then, sci-fi, mythology, futuristic stuff. I kind of just try to culminate everything I was like really into: streetwear, cars, skateboarding, like everything. And even though it doesn't like always manifest directly into the work, I think it's always inspired, by those things. And I think you can see it in the work if you look, if I get people references like, oh, that's kind of like that kind of reference, or that's kind of this, like, oh, okay, I see it now. It's not always super direct, but the work is, and I just kind of try to go by what I'm inspired by now is like brighter colors, positive imagery. My goddess characters are, very like regal and, ethereal and stuff. And just it's stuff that I just always liked, so that's like the short form, the short version of that. But yeah.
And I think a lot of people, or at least for your public art, a lot of people know you for your goddess characters. Where does that inspiration come from?
Probably same place. Was like I always loved like comic book characters, and it's kind of like comic books are like American. My dad always says it's American mythology. And so I love characters like Storm. I love characters that had like these crazy power ups and stuff like that, mm-hmm. right? The white eyes and stuff, and I always just like that, like like mythological, ethereal, like kind of beings. And I was like, okay, what am I thinking? And before they started very like Gundam, Japanese headpiece, inspired. And I still do those ones, but they kind of, through murals, they kind of started morphing into the more like abstract color, flowy shapes kind of thing. honestly, because it was a necessity when we were first getting started. Like, I'm like, man, I'm not getting paid enough, either A, at all, or B, enough to like sit here and spend a month on this mural. And so instead of doing like these crazy armored pieces that I was doing, I was like, how can I do this more simply? And the more abstract graphic shapes kind of took over because it was easier to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of became the style that got more known, which is
Isn't that funny?
But sometimes it's out of your control, but like I like that it naturally progressed into that.
Yeah.
And so I'm still, I feel like every piece you're kind of like metamorphosizing, and you're just like trying to see how it translates. Sometimes it's just like subconsciously it changes,
Yeah.
or how it makes, for like whatever piece you're working on. It's like, okay, now my shapes are gonna be a little more bouncy, or now they're gonna be a little more graphic, like
Or a little more wavy. Or...
Yeah, sometimes it just whatever kind of fits the piece. And I think I'm still slowly figuring it out, but it's always a process, as you know.
Yeah.
It's always
Well, I think that your color selection is just always on point. I can tell that you really take time in choosing your colors because, I was, commenting on how it's funny how you can put so much detail and work into like a style and then put some simple color strokes next to it. And everybody's like, can we get more of those just simple color strokes? And you're like, but look at the shield and the headpiece and the flow of this. And they're like, yeah, that's great. And sometimes I guess, even as I'm saying it out loud, it's confirmation for a client or for the viewer to know, okay, he's great at detail. He's great at portraits. He can do this. But these color strokes is really just what satisfies me.
Yeah. It honestly, it's like sometimes like simple, the more simple, the better, which, as you know, with murals, sometimes people just want to have like, I think they want to have more so the feeling than more like a direct image of like whatever it is. And
Right.
like, I love painting detail. I used to be really like way more detailed when I was doing more illustration. But as you get, a little further on trying to like make a living out of it, you're like, okay, I need to maximize my time. I can't spend a month on every piece. Like I have to get it done. It's still good work, but I think you have to like find the balance of like what makes use of your time. It's like, if I'm only paid X amount, and it sucks to think about money, but like you're like, if I'm only getting paid X amount, I can't spend 2 months on this piece, as much as I would love to. So like, doing the more simple stuff, the more, the bright color combinations, stuff like that. It's simple, but I think it's effective for like a wider range of people. Like kids like it, I think. Older people like it. I've been very grateful when people come up on the street and like, hey man, this piece made me so happy. Or like, I was not, feeling good and that just brightened up my day. And I'm like, that's like the best compliment you can get. And sometimes it's just using colors, like it's simple, but I think it's I think it provides like a natural response from people.
Yeah.
Which sometimes when it's overly detailed, they're like, it gets messy. They don't know what they're actually looking at sometimes. And for me, I think like the realism of the portraits of the goddesses, and then make like juxtapose with the graphic line work or flowy shapes, it's kind of a nice balance, of them, I think. So
what's your preference, spray can or paintbrush?
Ooh, that's tough. I think it depends on the project. Sometimes I'll switch it up and I'll do, like I just did a piece where it was all just flat painted, acrylic. But then sometimes you're like, I don't have time for that, so I need to speed it up with spray paint a little bit. I like spray paint. I would say a little bit more because I think you could edit and adjust more. You could apply faster. And I think for me, I don't know if I have ADHD or whatever, but like it helps me like whatever I'm feeling at the time, I can make that adjustment and not have to wait for a coat to dry and not have to apply it slowly. You're like, you're pretty in and out. You're pretty quick. And that's probably my favorite, but I do like painting, like I'll do acrylic painting. I'll do oil sometimes with portraits on canvas and stuff like that. But I try to do them all just that way I'm comfortable. And not, so that way if someone's like, hey, like we love your work, but we can't spray paint in here, inside or something like that. It's cool to have a alternate style, but it's still within your style to kind of, just be able to offer that to people.
We were talking with Zoe Boston, and we were really just talking about how as an artist, so much of what you do is just problem solving.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that, even as you speak about spray paint it's a part of the problem solving,
Yeah,
especially as you become a professional artist. It's like, what
100%.
tool is going to be best for the time frame, for the environment?
Yeah,
And you had also mentioned, what's going to be easier to paint, or, I feel like artists have this challenge, especially when you reach a certain level of, dealing with clients, um, to where you're like, all right, where does it make sense? I
yeah,
could paint, 100 people on this wall, but how long is that going to take me?
yeah,
I could put
exactly.
all the details of all their buttons and all of it, but how long is that going to take me? What is the
Yeah.
budget of this?
Exactly, and that's like a true fact of like just trying to be a professional artist and a working artist is like again, yes, I would love to spend and am I capable? Probably probably to a degree, but like I could go crazy on details, and I do like doing that. Some of my older work was very like super meticulous, like micron pens, getting all the little details and but like now I'm like, man, I can't afford to spend that much time, unless I have free time and I'm working for something for myself. But I think it's trying to find like you said, problem solving, decision making. I think it's a huge it's like, okay, am I gonna go with this color or does that work? And sometimes you try it out and it's like, that doesn't really work. Good thing about spray paint is if it doesn't work, you
You can
write
go over
go
quick.
over quick. If it's oil or something, you're like, damn, I gotta wait a couple days, and I got whatever, and I think like exposing yourself to those different challenges is good because if
Hmm.
they do arise on a project, you're like, okay, I know how to fix this. And like if the client's like, why is this not looking like how I thought, whatever, you're like, Hold on, it's like it's gonna,
Yeah.
it's most artwork, it's always not always, but most of the time, it's looking rough until it doesn't, right? Like it's like, okay, it's worker, until the last little details are on there. You're like, all right, I think that's and some people I'm sure you probably experienced too. I'm sure most of our friends and peers that have painted, people early on in the stage of a public mural, they're like, what the hell is going on? Like
All the
what are
time.
these hieroglyphs you're putting on the wall? It's like it's just a grid, don't worry. I'm not, I've had people kind of press me a couple times, like, yo,
Oh
bro,
yeah.
what you doing out here? I'm like, oh, hey, hold on, hold on. And then a couple days later, they start seeing the sketch, they start seeing the outlines and the colors, are like, oh, okay, like I get it. And that's always a fun process because
Yeah.
it's kind of like a magic trick a little bit where
It
like,
is.
people, they're like, what's going on? And sometimes I like working. I've had like certain projects where I work late at night, a public one, like outside. And it's like people are like, oh man, I walked by here yesterday. It didn't
There
look
was
nothing
nothing
like
up
this. It's
there.
like, yeah, well, I was here till 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
working on this.
And it's
And,
so funny because it's sometimes to avoid the haters, but then it's
true.
also to cast that element of illusion to
Mhm.
where they didn't see anything. Now you popped a rabbit out of your hat.
They're like, what the hell? Was this? Like I've had people like literally come up to me like, this was blank yesterday.
Yeah.
It was like, well, I try to work fast, if I can, but like that's a fun aspect to it. I think a lot, and I've said this a few times where it's like the best thing about murals opposed to like gallery work or canvas or digital work or anything like that is you get people's like natural response
Yeah.
when they're about their day.
Yeah.
Like whether they're walking home from work or going to work, picking up their kids, whatever. And sometimes it affects them positively, sometimes negative, which is always okay, but having like the actual true response, because if you're going to a gallery or a museum, you're ready to experience art, so you're kind of already in the
Yeah.
mindset, which
Yeah.
is cool. And,
And you don't
and,
want to
and
offend anybody or,
yeah,
but people naturally just walking by as like they're going,
they're gonna tell you how they really feel most of
mm-hmm.
the time, and usually, like the few projects we've worked on, especially the most recent one, we were over on 29th, and it was like, hey man, I appreciate this so much, and like that's like the best feeling of
Yeah.
like someone just actually stopping, what they got going on, whether they're in their car, they're like, hey man, what's up, um, and just showing love, like that's like the most, like getting paid to make art is cool, and we gotta make a living, but
that
having that,
acknowledgement
yeah,
of genuine care.
it's work, it's like makes it worth it.
Yeah. Because I tell people a lot of times that like, are you an artist struggling to sell your artwork? I know the feeling. I've been there, so much so that I decided to publish a book, The Art of Articulation. This book will help you not only navigate the art world, but give you the vocabulary to step into a room with confidence so you can sell your artwork. pick up this book on Amazon today. Public murals, public art is almost like getting dressed in front of people, right? So
Exactly.
I'm putting on my socks, I'm putting on my underwear, my undergarments, and you're walking by and being like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, hey, hold on. I
Yeah.
haven't put the full ensemble on yet.
Let me get the whole fit on.
But even for those that do walk by and they, like they see you in that almost naked state and they're like, you know what? Nice socks and underwear combo. You're like, you
"Yeah."
see me. All right, you see where I'm going with this,
Yeah.
right? You see that I'm trying, And yeah, it is one of those affirmations when people can see you fully dressed and all the color on the wall, and now they're like, "Oh,
I get it.
I get it, man! You were naked yesterday, but now you really got style."
It's funny. I was working on a project late last year, early this year, and it was a big project. And even when I first started, I just painted everything black, right?
Mhm.
And I think people thought I was just like a city worker or something, just like, okay, they're just painting it black, that's cool. And then and then no one said anything to me. They just thought I was like a city worker, right? And I'm like, that's fine. And then as the piece started progressing and like the line work gets up, people are like, oh, all right. And then I'm like, and a few people that are nice enough to talk, I'm like, hey, like this kind of like what it's gonna look like the mock-up, right? And they're like, oh shit.
You
Like,
can do
they're
that?
like, whoa. I'm like, okay. They're like, oh, I'm gonna come back and check it out. I'm like, give me a little time. This will take a little time to get there. But I've had projects where people, whether it's in a certain neighborhood or they're like locals, neighbors, whatever, and they're like, hey, like we walk this way every day. This is like, our nighttime walk or whatever. And you kind of become friends with people sometimes
Yeah.
where they're like, I've had families give me, hey man, do you need water? Do you need food? Like, I'll bring you something. And usually I'm like, no, I'm okay. Sometimes people don't let that be an answer. They're like, hey, here's some stuff. I'm like, yo, thank you so much. Like, I needed that Gatorade. It was hot out here. I was dying. And so like that's probably the best and I think coolest thing is like that like genuine community that you get while you're working on something. Even in some of like not the best places.
Yeah.
I've had people, some OGs on the block like, hey brother, that's cool. I'm like, thank you. I'm glad that you, of all people are like appreciating it.
Yeah.
You live around here, obviously. And like, or, whatever, but like people that are just neighbors, around there. It's always a nice experience just to give some sort of positivity.
We had a situation like that over in Bayview. We were trying to paint a mural, and these, the local, community, part of them banging with not so first 2 or 3 days they wanted to know what we were doing. Then we explained it to them. So then every day after that, they wanted to come by, hang out, take pictures with us, wanted to bring us beer. And, I'm not a big drinker, so I don't really drink when I'm on, especially in the sun and when I'm painting on
it's not the best thing,
equipment and stuff like that. So I was like, no, I'm good.
I'll have a beer here.
But then, but then you also, it's that old school hospitality. You don't want to reject, your blessings because then they turn into curses.
Yeah.
So, you're turning people's food down or your, libation. Then they're like, well, I'm not going to give him anything.
Yeah,
so, I had a beer with them, but then they would not leave and they wanted to stay. And then one of them brought their friend and was like, hey, my homeboy, he paints too. Can he get down? And I'm like, okay, all right. I'm all for
chilling.
And we have times where we have community paint, but then there's other times where I'm like, okay,
I got to get to work.
Yeah, I got to get to work. Yeah. You ever have any experiences or any funny stories like that?
Yes. I've had, it kind of happens like because I am a talker, even though I don't like, I am. If you know me, then I don't shut up sometimes. And so if we're talking and like we're having a good conversation, I don't know when to like end it. And I'm like, I don't want to be rude. And they're not ending it. And so I'm like, hey man, I'm so sorry, but I gotta get back to work. But mostly I've had people like stop by and like, it's always like, oh, my boyfriend paints or my dad paints or something. I'm like, that's cool. And if another artist stops by and they're like, oh, I paint too. And I love checking out people's work.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it is finding that like, I could give you 15, 20 minutes maybe at the most or something like that. But if I'm on a deadline or like I have a lot of work left, if it's towards the end, I'm kind of chilling, then it's like, cool. But if I'm like in the heat of it and I gotta get this done by Friday or I get this done by next
one word
week,
answers.
You're like, hey, it just depends on my mood. I try not to like brush off people, even if they just say like, hey man, looks good. I'm like, hey, thank you. Like I try to make sure I'm not, but sometimes people are like driving down the street and yell at you, or even if it's positive, I'm like, thank you. You know, just
Yeah.
kind of give them a hand wave or something. And, you know, I think it's, shit. Sorry. I think it's like nothing. I've had nothing. I've had people say some wild stuff to me, and it's sometimes I'm like, not in a bad way, but just like, hey man, I'm not gonna bring it up.
No, go ahead. What's the wildest thing that
so
you?
I was working late on it was like 10:30 at night, and like I'm up on a ladder working, and some dude comes up to me. He's like, hey bro, I'm not weird, but like, do you know where the massage parlors are at? I'm like, that's the weirdest thing you could ask me right now, and I don't know because I'm here painting a mural at night. I'm not even from here, you know, whatever. And it was such a, and he was genuine, like, hey, brother, like, I was like, I didn't know they had massage parlors. And he was talking
What
about
city were
those.
you in?
I was up north.
Okay.
Yeah, I was up in.
So he's looking for the happy ending.
I guess, and I was like, I didn't know that was like that out here, you know, like it was. I've had like other random stuff happen, but like that was one recently where I was like, don't even know how to answer. I'm like, bro, I'm covered in paint.
He's like, you look like a brother that needs a massage.
Yeah.
You gotta know.
I'm like, yeah, a regular one, you know, but not, I don't need that one. But like, you know, and I've had people just like yell random stuff to you. Drunk people coming out of like bars and stuff like that.
All
Usually,
day.
you know, which I'm like, hey, if you're cool, I have no problem with that. But if you start getting, you know, then you get to the negative side of it. People trying to like steal from you or like.
Never had anybody trying to steal your paint?
Yeah, I had to hop off a lift one time. I like swang off it.
No way.
And
What city were you in?
I was in Oakland.
Oakland. Shout out to Oakland. Oakland will not only bip you, they will steal your shit.
It's, you know, I get it.
Love Oakland though.
I do.
We paint in Oakland all day, every day.
Always.
But it's real out here.
You just gotta be on top of your stuff and not leave too much out, you know.
No,
so,
I've had. So I left a generator up on a lift. I had ran to Home Depot, right here in West Oakland. Wasn't even 40 minutes, not even a half an hour. So the scissor lift, I put up like maybe 10 feet and had the generator up on top of it. So I was like, nobody will steal this. Just lift it up. I'll be right back. I just gotta go get some paint.
yeah.
I came back.
They climbed it.
Lift gone.
Oh, they took the whole lift.
They climbed it. And the crazy part, I was mad, but then also amazed and astonished. 'Cause I'm like, damn, climbing it is one thing, but climbing down this thing with the generator,
That's crazy.
because it wasn't no light generator. I was like, these cats is thirsty.
He threw it up on the shoulder.
No, it was one of these ones you had to like,
Oh.
it had to be a two-man job. When I was sitting there doing the math, I was like, one person couldn't have climbed up here and lifted this thing down.
It's like, how you?
Like dropped it and
Strong.
broke it, and then it wouldn't be no good to either
Yeah.
one of us, maybe. But like one person, nah.
Hey, sometimes that strength, they be having that strength.
That's what I'm
sometimes.
saying. When you thirsty, when you hungry, you'll do some
Hey.
unhuman shit.
hmm
Yeah.
I mean, you know, around the corner, we had a little one.
Oh, while you was doing the dragon?
Yeah. The guy he started tweaking a little bit and started, you know, kind of, you know, going a little crazy. But other than that's like the only time I've had someone like physically trying to like, you know, and he was just not in his right mind, which
Yeah.
hey, I felt bad for him. But it was like also, hey, bro, like back up, you know. That's the only time I had someone like try to like do something.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's just people like, because like I usually just keep my paint on the ground or whatever. I'm trying to get better at bringing like a table just to have a little more official,
More official setup?
Yeah, I don't know. But like that's, you know, that's part of it. If you're
It's
painting on the
part of it.
streets, if you're painting on the streets, is, you know, like I try to just like having it in my mindset, like, hey, I'm putting positive stuff out there. No one's gonna like I'm not bringing no real negativity to me. So I usually feel safe wherever I'm at. But you do have to be, if you're from the Bay, you know, like, yeah, you just gotta watch your stuff.
Gotta keep
Like,
your head on a swivel.
like
Yeah.
sometimes if I'm on the street and I want to shoot something, I'll just shoot with my phone, because having the camera out sometimes is just a, you know,
You
target.
asking for it.
Yeah,
I've-
which sucks. but
I've done it
is.
before, but like you gotta keep it tucked. Especially if I'm like recording myself. Like I record from my iPad
Oh,
in the car or something, but I'll have to keep it tucked and kind of like keep within like running distance, you know, of it, so that I'm like, all right, let me just keep on. Yeah, it's real out here. You gotta, you know.
I think being a muralist, you're like, I think if you're from the Bay, you're just like naturally street savvy. But I think being a muralist, you're definitely like more thrust into it of just having to recognize people's, and you know, like mannerisms and
Yeah.
how they're acting, how they looking. And you know, I've like walked across the street a couple times just to get a look. I see people walk by like, like, hey, bro, hold on. They're like, oh, my bad. I'm like, I saw what you about to do, though. Like, don't act like it's good now.
You can see it from afar.
But that's part of it.
So where, what neighborhood you grow up?
So I'm from Hayward originally.
Okay.
Grew up like South Hayward. Lived there pretty much my whole life until I moved to SF in like 2014, 2015. Okay. Went to art school for a little bit, and then, just kind of kept it moving since then. But grew up in Hayward, grew up all East Bay kid, all sorts of stuff. Played a lot of like basketball growing up in Oakland, lots of sports, stuff like that. And I was always like a sports kid, but also, was always like, it was kind of like the juxtaposition. It's like, you're the big sports kid. I played everything, but then I was also like the little anime nerd that was drawing in my agendas in school, and I have old like I said, Dragon Ball Z, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, stuff like that, where I was just like drawing every little page I could.
Yeah.
And so I mean, East Bay is a great place to grow up. I appreciated like just the different types of cultures. Obviously, you grew up around people, experiences, stuff like that. Like very just like regular.
Yeah.
Childhood, I guess, but
yeah, nice. So in your line of work, has there been any great collaborations that you found like just like memorable? What's one of the most memorable projects that you've worked on?
Probably the bag for Steph Curry.
The bag for I was going to ask you to tell that story.
Yeah. The backpack for Steph Curry was one because I've been again from Hayward. Grew up Warriors fan, whole life, been going to Coliseum whole life until they moved to Chase. And obviously Steph is like a god out here, right? If you're from the Bay, you're a Warriors fan, it's like, he's like Mac Dre, Steph, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a few people that just could do no wrong. And so when I got the call, just got like a random DM, and someone like I think referred me for the project. I was like, what? And like, for real? Like, and you're like, okay, I can't mess this up. I gotta make sure like I make sure the project happens because sometimes they could just go to another artist, right?
Yeah, that's the one part. That's first step.
Yeah,
it's like you're like amazed, but then you're like, is this real?
You're like,
all right, let me
this
see
in.
the paperwork and
let's
call me back in 2 days and tell me it's real again.
Exactly, because sometimes people will have all the enthusiasm to hear budget or they hear price or whatever. But they were great to work with. They worked with this brand SC30 at the time. I think they're 30 Inc. now. The people over there, Jordan, Cameron, I appreciate y'all. They just, were like, hey, we have this bag. Steph's gonna wear it before a game. It wasn't anything too crazy, but they just like, hey, we kind of want some artistic versions of his logos throughout the bag. They gave me some references and stuff, and had about a week to do it, and which wasn't a lot of time because I'm like, I've never painted a backpack before, so I had to do a lot of research.
Oh, you hand painted that? They didn't get that printed. You hand painted
it. It was hand, but I was smart. I was not smart, but I was like, okay, I can't hand paint these logos exactly. So I was able to use like a cutter to get some vinyls cut out.
I was like, those were clean. Those were super clean.
I airbrushed and then like touched up with hand paint.
Nice,
and
smart.
did little things. Cause I was like, I sent them so many different ideas, and Seth actually chose the one that they went with, which was cool. And it was a really like just cool experience. Dropping it off, and then it was before like the playoffs, not this past year, but the year before. And it kind of became like an inside joke with me and my family, who were all diehard fans, that like every game he wore it to, because they would like show like the tunnel, and he was and I thought, okay, it's an obligation for him and a like a marketing thing. He'll wear it once. That's it. Yeah. Fine, cool. I get one photo of Steph in my bag.
I'm good.
That's cool.
Put it in the portfolio.
He wore it to a bunch of games, and then even the people from his company were like, "Oh, Steph, that's on him. Like he really likes it, so he's wearing it on his own, volition." And I was like, cool. And then every game he wore it to, they won until they didn't, and then they I think they lost.
Where the bag, bro?
I was like, you should have won the bag. That's why they lost to the Lakers that year, and I was like, should have won the bag.
Should have won the bag, man. And it's funny too with bags, and like men in bags we're funny. There's some people that are really into bags. Like my father's a bag man. He just has so many just bags for specific things. But like with men in bags, it's like it's got to serve a purpose. And once we put our stuff in a bag,
it's like, oh, it works.
That's it. This is like I sat there and watched my mom, even my partner. Like they can change bags. Like, okay, this one matches this. All right, let me take my wallet, my keys, and for men, once we put everything into a wallet or a bag, like that's Maybe that's just my experience. Do you switch up bags? No, you switch up.
It's funny. I actually before I went full time artist, I used to work for a bag company in SF, and I went from like, working part time when I was going to school. And then by the time I was there, I was like managing, the store, and which was cool. But and they had all sorts of bags, so I had to be very familiar and sell bags and stuff like that. And I got a few when I was working there, obviously. But like my backpack now is the first bag they gave me when I first started working there.
Exactly.
2015. It's been almost 10 years. And that bag's still holding. Like I use it to paint in now and whatever. But I'm like, that bag's...
if it ain't broke, don't fix it. No. That's, when the strap break.
And I'm not like super... I take care of myself. But I'm not super like, oh, okay, I said it, And we would have people when I worked there. We had people come in. I'm like, dude, you had that bag for 3 months, and I'm like, what'd you do? Did your dog tear it up? I was like,
What's going on, good people? Andre Jamora here, and as the executive director of the Bay Area Mural Program, I want to tell you about Chroma Paint. Chroma is our go-to brand, and we want to make sure it's your go-to brand too. Visit them at their website at chromaonline.com.
But yeah, like I'm super. I mean, I do like bags. I do like stuff just from working there. But once it works, I'm pretty simple. Like I'm pretty good. Like I like all sorts of I like clothes, like shoes, all that kind of stuff. But I love it, but I don't let it like run. Like I wouldn't buy a pair of shoes if I didn't have it. Like, oh, I need that pair of shoes. It's like, okay, I can wait, or whatever. But if I got it and I want it,
you got a crazy sneaker collection?
I got a decent one.
Yeah.
I got some.
What's decent?
I probably got like 30, 40 pair of shoes.
Okay.
Like
that's decent. That ain't ham. That ain't.
No.
Yeah.
I got homies that got like hundreds. I'm like, dude, I can't. And I wear my stuff. Like
I get it, but I don't get it.
I wear my stuff.
I'm old school where I'm like, I got 2 pair of feet. I need a pair of black shoes, pair of brown shoes, and maybe some sneakers.
It's cool, but you realize, like, especially now, like when I was working at a store and I had to get dressed to go every day, I was able to put.
When you in it,
yeah. But now it's like I'm mostly in paint clothes. Either I'm working from home, studio, or on
I think
a
that's
job.
what it is.
And when I do go out, it's like, oh, damn, I have shoes that I bought months ago that I haven't worn yet, and it's just, I'm like, should I bought these? Like, I don't know if that was a good investment. But it's nice to have just as like as a collector. Like both my parents are collectors of all sorts of things. They just love their different, like my dad with comics, stuff like that. He collects statues. My mom's with like arts and crafts stuff. And coffee cups. But
they got any of your paintings?
They don't. I've given them some drawings before, but like
I haven't.
They don't have any. I'm trying to get them. I feel bad. I know like hell of my family members.
What level of collecting are your parents? Do they have like do they get it like appraised or thing? Have they been on any of like
not like collecting like that, but they have like their like niches of stuff that they like. Like my dad, he's like I said, he loves comics, but he's like a huge Batman Superman guy. His office right now, he works over by Oakland Airport. It's like Batman museum. I'm like, which is cool because I grew up with that, so it's like cool. But he has like crazy statues and figures and stuff. And me and him, like, we'll go to like comic conventions here and there, and which is cool because like I'm like, hey, I could be a grown up and still be a kid at the same time. My pops was always like that. So we'll go comic book conventions here and there, just buy a few figures. And
you ever draw Superman or Batman for him?
Oh, of course.
Oh man.
Yeah, but not recently, but the last like probably a few years ago. Honestly, before I started getting really into like painting. I was doing graffiti again, like high school, a little after high school. I kind of stopped all art from like 2010 to 2015. And then when I got back, I was like, it was kind of like a life change. Like, I was just like working kind of shitty jobs or whatever. And I wanted to get back into like a vocation. I was like, hey, what am I going to do? I was like, you know what? I'm going to just put it all in. I'm going to go to art school. Even though I haven't been drawing for the last 5 years and that was not good when I first got started. But like going through that like basic training and like learning like, portraits and figure drawing and all that kind of stuff, I started getting back into drawing comic book characters, and I was doing like Copic marker drawings back in the day because I thought that was like cool. I could post it like, Black Panther comes out. I did a bunch of, when that movie came out, I did a bunch of drawings for it and blah, sold them here and there, whatever. But then like something switched. It was kind of like it was like, this is cool, but not what I'm actually looking for as an artist. And then, I'll never forget because it was one of those like aha, like eureka moments where it's like I watched Basquiat, the Radiant Child documentary, And and everyone knows Basquiat. Like it's everyone knows the story. He's one of the goats, right? But for some reason, that documentary like hit me, and it switched my approach of what I wanted to be as an artist. And I was like, and not that I wanted to copy his work or anything like that,
I was
because
gonna say, what hit you?
a lot of people do, but just like the story, like the aspect of like how to be an artist and like what it means to like have your work be original and like true to you and your style, your brand, everything. And I think there's like most people, they just kind of fell in love with his story. Keith Haring, guys like that. They're goats, Warhol, anyone from that like late 70s, 80s New York it was crazy time at the time. And that kind of like changed my mindset of like, I don't want to just be, I love comics, I love illustrating, but I'm like, I don't want to just be the guy like sitting behind a table and like that. I was like, and then murals came along, and I painted like one in 2018, and it was a little wall on Valencia in SF, and my homie Alex, shout out Alex, he was like, "Yo, bro, I had an old piece there. It's been torn. People tagged it up, whatever." He's like, "If you want to paint something there, just go ahead." And it was like right up the street from where I worked at, so I was like, "Shit, okay." I painted like my first little goddess in that little doorway, and then I didn't paint nothing since. And then it was like 2018, 2020, and then it started going from that. And I was like, man, and I've told the story a bunch, but like on here, obviously.
Tell it again.
2020 hit, obviously, it was kind of a shock for everybody, obviously, right? And so I was like, man, I really wanted to paint. I was kind of ready. I was kind of done mentally at my job, even though I was there for a while. So I was like, it's just time for me to make a change, right? And when the pandemic hit, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise of like, all right, we're getting some extra unemployment money. I'm getting paid. I had money, a little money saved and all that. And so I remember seeing all the boarded up murals going up. And I was like, man, I want to get in on that. Like, I just wanted one. I was like, I just want to get out there and just be a part of this. I've seen everything. I've seen you guys painting. Like, I've seen so many people. Before I even really knew you, but I saw BAMP, you guys like doing so much work just, in Oakland and online, so yes. And a bunch of people in the Bay. And I was like, man, I want to get on one. And my first couple of murals, I always tell people like, we're free. Sometimes you just got to get it. You got to
get in.
You got to get it where you can. Sometimes you're not going to get the big check if you don't just, and so you have to show people you could do it first. Did a couple for free, which weren't great, but I think they were a stepping stone, right? And then it led to like, more down. Oh. I got you. Okay. It was like a stepping stone of like, all right, get a few $100s here, $500 here, $800. It just kept on building and building, and it was just like, I was on foot. Like I didn't have a car at the time. Because I was in SF, I didn't really need one for the longest, and then I was like, "Oh shit, this is not really the best." hopping on bus with a whole cart, paint, ladder, stuff like that.
Do what you gotta do.
And I was struggling. I was like over here like hustling, like, "Oh, man, I'm trying to get it." And then like it just kept on going, and then eventually like I think it was like March. I think by August I was able to buy a car, and I bought my little G35 that I got, which I appreciate. And it was a cool, like, slow build up to like getting bigger and bigger pieces. And then just people see your work. And like I had, Charlie from the box shop. I was painting with Kalani at the Orpheum. We were over off Hyde and Market, whatever, Civic Center. And Charlie was walking down the street and he was like, "Oh, I've seen your work before. I like it. I own this place called the Box Shop, blah, blah, blah. Would you want to come paint?" And just like that. And I went over there and did a piece there. And like, so it's always like, I always just say snowballing because it's just like, hey, slowly you just gotta, if opportunity comes, I tell any people that ask me, I'm like, if opportunity comes, you gotta just try your best to do it, follow through, do your best.
You gotta take it.
Hope something else comes through after, right? And like, it can't, sometimes if the money don't make sense at all, like even close to what you gotta do, then you gotta weigh those options.
Yeah.
But if it's even close, like I've taken pay cuts on certain jobs just to get the work, right? And it's not the, I've had people like disagree with that method, but I'm like, look, man.
Well, value is, it's not always monetary.
Yeah.
So you have to like weigh, the value, like is this piece of artwork going to go in a great location that thousands, if not millions of people are going to see? Because I tell people all the time that no one's going to give you your first mural.
No, not really.
So you either have to, go out and take it, or you have to be even if it's for free, it's such a compliment for somebody to say, hey, can you come and bless my wall that I live in, work in,
Yeah.
that I have to look at every day. So like, even if you don't get a big budget for your first project or for a project, it's, about, one, getting the experience, because doing mural painting is a whole different monster than canvas painting.
Of course, yes.
And two, it's about, perspective. If you were to pay for a billboard to advertise your brand or your work, how much would you pay for that billboard?
Exactly.
Probably a couple hundred, if not $1,000.
Yeah.
But the balance is you can do that billboard for free.
Yeah.
I'm gonna drop that billboard.
Exactly.
I'm gonna get that.
It's because it's like almost like being, it's like being, I know I hate to say it, but it's like, in a way, it's like being a graph writer, because you're like, hey, I need my ups, like I need my name up, my work up, but legally, thankfully, now, but like, it's like I have a rule of thumb where it's like, all right, if you're gonna let me, if it's a good location, and you're gonna let me paint what I want, I'll I'll come do it for free. Like if I have time, if you're like, hey man, you can come paint whatever you want. I'm like, cool. I've been thinking about, I've had this idea for a while. I got paint left over, which you always end up having a bunch of paint from projects left over. And that's when like we did Mexicali Rose, which was a cool project, and that was a fun project to be around so many artists doing that piece, right?
That was a cool project,
and it was cool. For me, it was like I had a couple weeks in between projects. I had a bunch of paint. I still went and bought paint, but like I had a bunch of stuff left over. It was a cool experience, and that's one of my favorite pieces that I've done. Just because it was like big, it got to be like focused. Got to paint next to
Dave. You had
it was David and
David Burks on one side,
and
Nat Megs.
It's the other Natty,
Natty.
Natalie. I believe.
Natalie,
yes. I always, but Dave and Natalie both killed it, and it was just a fun time. And so stuff like that, like, hey man, you can paint what you want, blah blah. I'll come do it. But if you're asking me for like specific stuff, and you're gonna critique, I have to send you mock-ups and stuff, then you gotta
then you're gonna have to pay for that. And then usually, if it's in between projects, timing is a big part of it. But like collab projects where I know I'm gonna be painting around with other artists, I'll come out and just for that experience and inspiration.
Exactly. Even the one we just did,
the CVS, man. I'm so glad that you were able to come out and be a part of that.
I appreciate the invite for it. It was super dope.
Yeah, no, it's just, and then even being able to, as the higher you get into the professional public art realm, like you have to really find, as part of the problem solving, this balance of keeping your integrity as an artist, painting what it is that you want, but then also what it is that the client is looking for.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, we don't take every project, but you also got to keep the lights on and pay bills.
Yeah.
So you got to find, how do I take this project and make it mine, but still keep the client satisfied.
I've been getting better at that, honestly. I just did one recently in an office in SF, and they wanted a specific theme, and I was like, I'm down with that, but only if I could. Not because I was like I could do it, but it doesn't make sense for me to just like regurgitate a photo and just paint it as it is. That's kind of boring, in my opinion. But sometimes if you gotta do it, you gotta do it. I understand. But I was like, hey, I was like, yo, can I make it more graphic and more like flat and colorful and just bold? And then when I showed them when I had it like as an idea, they were like, that's great. Because sometimes
the Dias del Monte.
Yeah,
that piece is fire.
Thank you. I haven't really posted the full one. The full.
You finished?
I'm finished with that. I just haven't. I've been trying to edit the video for it, and which takes forever. And
behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's all posting on Instagram is tougher than I.
It's work, man.
It's more work. Sometimes I'm like, because also you finish a piece, you're like, I got other real work to do.
I got to go,
trying to,
finish this piece, but I need to put all these
trying to focus on the caption
videos together and put the time lapse and make sure it says the right thing and come up with some creative words to go.
Yeah,
it's work.
But the fun part of that piece and most pieces like that you're doing for like a client is like, how can I take your vision and like I want to say regurgitate. That's kind of
interpret it in your style.
Interpret it through my style, and like let me put some. That way, people know it's like okay, like this isn't Matley's Goddesses, but we see the bouncy line work, we see the colors, we see there's themes that are in there, right? And I've been getting better at like identifying what my things as an artist that you could like identify my work as, and then what I could also do differently.
Shout out to your line work, because your line
I'm
work
trying-
is impeccable, bro.
Really,
Like sometimes I'm one of those guys that, will go looking for the error,
yeah.
and I'm like,
I
yeah.
tr-
In your work, I'm like, it's pretty seamless. I'm looking, all right. I'm looking for a little spray outside the line.
Sometimes,
It always happens, but it's just the amount of attention you give to detail, and just like I said, even some of your lines, because I'll look, and I mean, you can tell when some lines aren't straight, but then there's sometimes where you got to study even longer and like, damn, that is almost too perfect for like 20 feet. Where did he? No, he couldn't have used a ruler. Damn, that is a straight ass line.
it's just like
It's a
well,
meditation.
thank you, I appreciate it, and it is tough because sometimes you think you're on point, especially like I've realized like long curving lines that are supposed to be like graphically, I won't say perfect, but they're supposed to be on like an actual like curves.
Yeah.
It's tough to get that because I think our brains know what's a circle or what's not, right?
Yeah.
Like what's a perfect circle, and you could tell if things are off. Sometimes not as much, but like I think as I've gotten better, I'm getting better. I realize I'm like, that's a little off. Let me just go a little bit more.
Touch it up a little bit. Yeah.
And sometimes
you guys just leave it.
sometimes you're like, damn, this is my last day, no matter what, and so I have to like,
You got to pick and choose what's important.
yeah, like the recent piece, the Day of the Dead piece, like they didn't have a deadline, but I gave myself one. I was like, this is my last day here,
Yeah.
and so I, they were in office and they were working there, so I would get there like 5, like they would leave at 5, I get there like 5:30 p.m. and I was working, I worked pretty late, 1, 2, 3 a.m. sometimes, but like that last day, I was like, I'm not coming back because I'm tired. I've been working on this for a couple weeks, and I think I left at like 7 a.m. or something like this. Put a long day in because I was like, hey, this is it. I try to triple check everything, make sure there's no super standout mistakes because it's paint at the end of the day. We're not, like this is great, but this is hard to do paint wise,
Yeah.
right? Like it takes a little time, and so at a certain point you just gotta be like, I'm calling it. I think it's done enough. One of my favorite quotes from an artist. He's an illustrator. I don't know if you ever heard of like the Inktober, where they do it's like all black and white drawings for a month. He's like a more common illustrator, but Jake Parker. And it's a simple quote, but he says, "Finished, not perfect," and it always stuck with me after I heard it. I was like, because sometimes you always sit there and touch up and fix things, right? And at a certain point, you got to be like, hey man, how much time can I put into this? Am I doing this for a budget? Am I doing this for cheap? Is it, whatever? And then, like if you could not see any big faults and you're pretty much done, I'm like, call it,
Call it.
Because otherwise I'll be here for another 2 weeks,
You can easily, and sometimes your imagination just like, oh, I could add this, I could add that, I can make that pop, but sometimes you have to just wrap it up. And I had Abba Yehuda was on here, and he, painted the picture perfectly of just like the conversation that his eyes have with the canvas. And he always is like painting, then, paint for a couple hours and then sit back and like, burn a spliff and just kind of like look at it and then work on it some more. He says when the canvas stops talking to him, he knows it's finished. Because usually he'll look at it and he'll be like, add a little more red over here. Yeah. Make that more round. That doesn't look like a circle. But when the canvas stops talking to him,
that's when it's done.
That's when he knows it's done.
I like that. That's super.
And sometimes he'll try and talk about like, maybe if I add, but if the canvas doesn't speak back, then it's finished. I thought that was just brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And then you run the risk of overdoing it. And that's the words where you're like, I should have just stopped.
Done that before.
I don't know why. I tried to do this one thing thinking it was going to help. And then it's like, and you damn near just mess up the piece.
Got to write the whole section out and just go back simpler.
It's a tough, like, I think knowing when to stop and when to, like, not to over design. I used to over design everything. You know, like, and that's something I learned because for a minute I was like, well, I'm gonna be like a concept artist. I love movies. I love comic book movies, stuff like that. And so like for a while I was like, damn, I want to be, the guys that like design the suits and the looks, because those are some of the best artists in my opinion. Like
real talk.
They like, especially the guys that work for Marvel. If you look at like the,
and how fast they can just bang the concept. Like I would be going back in the rate, like they're just like, shoot. The guys over at Pixar, I went over at Pixar as well too. I'm like, crazy. Okay, I thought I was good, but these guys just like flawlessly draw like 3 or 4 like concepts and like,
It's next level.
not that one, throw that away and just go back. I'm like,
And the one they throw away is amazing. still.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's like what? It's like, and, like you ever see some concept work? Like I love buying. One of one of the things I do collect are like art books from movies or from shows or things like that, because you see so much work that didn't get used for the film.
yeah,
I'm a big film person, but what didn't get used for the film, and then you like, man, like, and not to bring but like the Black Panther movie, like I got when that came out, I got the art book for it because I love the art. There's so much art in that movie. And he was still like, man, like there's so many costumes and so many ideas they had that didn't even get looked at. Like they were just, but I think it's just like, that's how you process of elimination to come up with like the final product, right? So you have to have all the ideas put out, and then now we know this is the best because we've seen all the other versions. And you can always,
let's speak to that because
Yeah.
I've had to really grow as an artist to appreciate that process and didn't really understand it until I was on the other side of it. But knowing that you have to have options, almost knowing what you don't like before you know what you do like. And when I started off doing this muraling thing, there was no Procreate, no Photoshop. The design that I put on this piece of paper right here that I've worked 4 or 5 hours on, I can't really do too much editing.
No,
so
it's tough.
Hopefully you like it.
It's tough.
Oh, can you make this? I
like-
would lose every mural project if they wanted edits because I wasn't gonna do any. And this was my style. I'm giving you all of me. I just spent 7 hours. I didn't go to bed last night. And I had to learn that people need to see, your whole heart thrown on paper, but they also need to see it in blue, and they need to see it in yellow, and they need to see it in green, just to really appreciate the first picture you originally showed them, if that's the one that but
it's usually the first one, but they need options. And so like my rule of thumb now with murals, because I've gone through that too when I first was getting started, before I had an iPad, I had like a Wacom, not a Wacom. I had a cheap like knockoff Wacom because I couldn't afford a Wacom. And that's when you try to like look at the computer.
Yeah, that was so hard.
It was so hard. It took me forever.
I couldn't figure that. I didn't have the hand-eye coordination to look at the screen up here, and right down here.
It was so hard, and that process, like that was probably like 2018, 2019 for me. I know you've been in the game a little longer, which is crazy. But that was when I was getting started, and I was like, man, this is it's not as easy as I thought, right? The iPad did change the game for me, for sure. Procreate and the iPad, that
I can give you as many options as you want.
Exactly. It makes it so much easier, and just like seamless. It's like I could work here, and I love Procreate because you don't need internet for it. So like I've worked on a plane, I worked on like if I'm waiting for an appointment or something, whatever. Like if I have time, I bring it with me usually almost everywhere,
man.
and I'll go sit. If I have a meeting at one time and a meeting later, I'm like, cool, I got a couple hours. I go
Game changer. You can't bring brushes and paint and water and pencils and like that's what I used to.
Yeah, which is that's a fun way to work when you have the time for it.
When you have the time and but it's not as conducive or just easily accessible when you're on a plane or when you're on
And just being able to give people, like I said, now my rule of thumb with projects is I usually try to give a client like 3 options, whether it be sketch wise or like composition wise, or just colors. Like, hey, like here's what it looks like with the yellow background. We could also go blue. We could go this and that. And like usually they'll go. Sometimes they get picky. They're like, oh, that's a little too yellow. I'm like, what does that mean? Like I don't know what that means. But like sometimes you just have to appease the feedback. And like, okay, well here's super yellow. Here's a little less. Whatever. I'm always learning on every project of how to be more professional, how to be
customer service is such a big part of it.
I was just telling someone this. I was like, dude, all the jobs I've worked like throughout, from like 17 to 25, whatever, and then the last one that I worked, but like every job now is like it's like showing me like every job is helping me now as an artist, whether it be like working, like I used to work like warehouses and shit, and like, drive. I just had a meeting yesterday where I was in like a big warehouse for a potential project. We'll see if that comes through. But we were at a big warehouse, and I was like, and they have forklifts and stuff. I was like, man, I used to be forklift certified. Like, I used to drive around, picking up, dropping, unloading trucks and shit. And that to me just taught me how like the like manual labor, like how to work. And like murals are manual labor. I'm always beat up.
Swing stages, scissor lift, boom lift.
I'm always beat up after a mural, which is I've been trying
That's
to
why thought you knew where the massage parlor was.
Dude was like, hey, you look like you need one. That's,
No, it's work though.
but it's work.
And I was, shout out to Zoe Boston once again. But we were just talking about how, you really have to, build like your diet, your well-being, stretching into your routine, especially, the longer you do this.
It's last year. I'm still working on it, but this last year I started, trying to be healthier, getting, work out more, get in shape, and yes, it's for personal health and everything, but also it's like, man, if I want to paint murals, and if I get a schedule where I'm painting back to back, I've had murals where I'm like, dude, I don't want to get out of bed the next day, after like a week long, week of work, especially if you're on a ladder,
Ladders are tough on the knees and the shins,
the calves. Like my calves are always
man.
burning. And that's just a fact. People don't realize that like it is physical labor. And so I'm glad that I've had jobs that have kind of taught me that.
Yeah.
I did a lot of sales jobs too. Like I did like telemarketer sales. I used to sell appliances. Which I'm like, why the hell was I like 22 selling appliances, whatever? But it was like at the time, I needed a job. Yeah. And even my most recent job where I worked at the boutique, it was a small boutique, so I was the only one there. Like when I would work, I'd be the only one there. So like any management, things, any sort of, or just trying to sell, in-person sales, right? And like people don't realize that it's like you have to, like you go meet up a client for a potential project, even though they want your work, you have to be able to convey.
You got to be able to paint a whole narrative, not only just a beautiful painting that's going to be on the wall, but you got to almost sell why it's going to look this way, why it needs to exist, why you're using these colors.
Why is it going to be why is it going to be the price it is? Because it's like, well, I'm using high quality paints, I'm traveling, like I'm this,
you can't just say because.
Yeah. You have to be able to convey that to start getting those bigger, budgets, right? And so I'm still learning. Like I feel like I learn every project.
Every project is a new.
It's something. It's like, okay, cool.
I kind of figure out
exactly, and I think that's I don't feel like a super professional yet, but I'm trying. I look at people like yourself. I look at other artists who are a little more professional, and I think there's a lot you can learn by just like observing, seeing how people operate, seeing how they manage, their paints, how they manage, their time, how they manage their studios, like whatever. Like I just like look and try to observe silently to myself, like, okay, that's how he organizes his colors, or that's how he puts his stuff together, whatever. And I think that comes to like the age-old term, good artist copy, great artist steal.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a term of like stealing people's work or their style or there's things like that.
But their work
ethic, how they approach things, how they, and more, especially nowadays for us, it's like, oh, I kind of saw artists like the way they presented their content, now because content.
There's certain natural laws and rules within life and within art, synonymous, that you just can't break or avoid. And that's where, like you're not copying, you're just going with the flow and the natural rhythm. Contrasting colors are contrasting colors. You can try and, get around and play around in that gray area.
Yeah.
But in order to, really see, what is it? Orange, like you put blue right next to it and it's going to be like, damn, okay, now I see how orange that is.
Like orange or purple, like works, right? Like there's some like just key facts are always going to be there.
And some masters have figured this out. So it's like, why recreate the wheel?
And you could always just, like, to me, like color palette, that's not stealing nobody's, unless someone created the colors themselves or something. But like stealing like, hey, like this is someone's, the way they do line work, that's a little more edgy, like you could be inspired.
But there's only but so many types of line work.
Exactly. There's only so many shapes you could draw, right? Yeah. But I think it's just like trying to find the right like code or combination of those shapes to like, and I'm still working on that of like, how do I find my, always like your code or like your method, right?
Well, I feel like it's always there. It's just unveiling it. You know, I feel like every time I paint or I've seen it with other people, whenever they paint, if you really look at it, you'll see little essences of the artist in the artwork. And
of their own artists or artists that they're inspired by?
No. Of like even just themselves.
Oh yeah,
People have been like, oh, that woman you painted kind of looks like you. And I'll be like, oh, I didn't mean for it to look like me. But basically what I'm saying is like, you're always, you're a reflection. So your inspiration, like I also believe there's nothing really new under the sun.
True. Oh yeah.
But what makes Matley Herd artwork different than Natty Rebel artwork is the fact that it just comes from your hand.
Yeah.
Even if we were both to go paint a lion, or
Yeah.
if we were both to even be given the same colors, like we do
Oh,
it
yeah.
at our art classes.
Oh yeah.
Everybody gets the same colors, same canvas, same brushes. You can't use anything, and it's still just amazing
The
how many
differences.
different even if we were to get specific, like everybody draw one thing, the different ways that it would be created, and then the amount of people that just look, even if they were to see, they'd be like, oh, that's how they're doing it. I'm going to do something totally different.
I think sometimes it's natural.
Yeah.
And this is one thing, like when I went to the Academy of Art for like a year or so, just to like, and I couldn't really afford it after that, but it was cool to like get started. But one of the things they said, like, and it always stuck with me when they first started, is like, the reason why you're an artist is because you have a different interpretation of everybody, right? So whenever, it's like, if I say, imagine the color blue, everyone's going to think of a different shade of blue, right?
Mhm.
Whether or not it's like royal blue, navy blue, light, whatever. It's like when you think blue, you think that's the color that's blue is, right? But we're probably thinking of slightly different shades of blue. And like, that's what makes your lens, like that's what makes your lens unique and you. And I think you have to be able to like realize and be comfortable with your own like feelings and like your own knowledge that like, hey, if I like this, go with that. Don't overanalyze. I'm like, oh, does this blue look like that? Sometimes you have to do that, but like I think having a natural feeling for the work is as important of like overanalyzing.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I feel like building a
most important
relationship
thing.
with the work is also, like, so the best narratives and the best, paintings are going to come from your experiences.
Yeah.
That's
and mine are different than yours, obviously.
and totally different. And I feel like just being able to convey those experiences out on canvas are going to be, like, even if we were both, spanked when we were kids, or like had similar like our processing is still going to might come to the same conclusion, but it's still going to be a different journey on how we get there.
And I think like the best way to get the best version of your work, and this is something I've been like thinking and working on, is like being honest with yourself and being okay with like what makes you you, right? And like again, and that's why I've been honest with like, yeah, like my stuff comes from comic books and like anime stuff that I just legitimately grew up on. Could I go and like base my work about something else, like, oh, like that person draws clothes or they do fashion, and that's kind of stuff I want to get into in my work a little bit too, but I want to do it like how I envision it, and not just because nowadays there's so much art. We were exposed to so much more art than artists were back in the day because of Instagram and the internet. That I think that a lot more artist styles bleed into other people's styles because you're aware. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, because you might have an idea and like, oh, this is cool, and you're like, oh, I saw another artist kind of do it, and maybe you might pull back. When if you didn't see that, you'd be like, cool, this is my original idea. And sometimes you have to understand, hey man, sometimes there's going to be overlap. I think not to get too metaphysical but or philosophical, but like I think there's a creative energy, collective consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that I think we all pull from. And I think there's like, I've seen people's work who I've never talked to, never even seen, and I'm like, oh, our headpieces are similar. Like we're interpreting it differently, but we're kind of going for the same thing without ever, I think that's just being inspired by certain things, whatever. And I've even heard artists were like, man, like I like working more at night because more people in the world are asleep, at least on your part of the world. So I feel, and people have talked about this many times, where they feel more creative at night because there's less people like tapping into that energy,
creative energy.
And I swear I feel it. Like sometimes like I'll be struggling during the day on a piece, and then I'll come home, whatever, and I'll work at night, just like before bed or something like that. I'm like, now I got something. Like it just came out of nowhere.
Isn't that
right?
such a deep concept?
It's weird,
because it's almost like chicken or the egg. As I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
The internet and Wi-Fi. Like, you remember back in the day when the internet first came out?
Yeah.
You couldn't have too many people on it, or it just wasn't going to run smoothly.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'll get on at nighttime because not too many people are on the internet at nighttime, and my pages will come up a lot faster.
I think it's 100% that.
Yeah.
And it's weird to like realize it and experience it. But I think once you're able to, you're like, okay, I can kind of tap into it a little bit. Like I think there's certain artists who are observers, and this is like a concept that I've like, thought about for a while. But like, there's observers. I think there were people who could just like, hey, that's a cool photo. I could hyper realize and paint that photo, which is a crazy talent in itself, right? But I think there's creators, the people that are able to like create, whether it's abstract or whatever, like just they're just super creative,
just raw. Yeah.
They're like natural, pressed strokes, stuff like that. And then I think there's channelers. Like I don't know if you like Mobius guys who are able to like visualize these like crazy universes, and like they're like so rich in like details and culture. Like that's got to be pulled from somewhere else, like another universe or another dimension.
Is he the one that does like the ongoing painting, like the?
He does like crazy. Like he's an older like French artist,
Okay,
and illustrator, and like you've seen his work before if the name isn't bringing it up. But like he did like very like sci-fi, futuristic, like otherworldly kind of like very like landscape with like travelers and people like that, right? And like you've seen the work. I know most people have, and I knew the work even before I knew his name. But I always think about him because I'm like, dude, if you look at his work, it's like you gotta be pulling from somewhere. Like this doesn't just come from nowhere.
I feel like all artists are channelers, but there's degrees to where like some like I've like even some of the Japanese illustrators where they'll just have like a brush and ink, and we'll start off like here and like paint a whole like storyboard going down, and like no mess ups, and like they're drawing worlds and people, and I'm just like, where are you? Like where all those references are right there. Like I got a few references up here that I can pull from, but I'm like, not a person's running through a portal from the back angle, like looking at it from a bug's perspective. I'm like, how did you? I need a reference for that. Yeah, some people you tell like they're artists and they're able to draw, like their mind's eye is just exactly what they're able to draw. I still struggle with it sometimes. I struggle with that as well.
Like sometimes it's pretty. Sometimes it can be vivid, where I have a very clear idea of what this is going to look like. Other times I'm like, I'll have a vague idea, and then as I'm working on it, it'll kind of like reveal itself, or it'll kind of like start to manifest, I think. And I think it's just in like your mindset. I think it's whether like the idea or the concept is like really speaking to you and like you're vibing with it. Other times it's a struggle, like especially like for projects like I realize for me, I'm working on a project right now where I'm like struggling with it because it's not really what I do, but it's
I can do this.
I can do that, but it's not my natural like inclination to do, right? And so, and I think you could work around that. You could like work through it and figure it out. Totally. But then for me, the best pieces come from where like, oh, I have a clear idea. I was able to work through it, and sometimes it changes as you're working on it. But like, I think you're like it's vivid in your mind, and you can tell some artists. I mean, your style is like perfect. It's on point. You draw like whether it be animated style, realistic, whatever. Like you're just able to like convey exactly what's in your mind, and that's a superpower. I think it is. And some artists have it to a certain degree. I think some artists also rely on like subconscious art, like abstract, where they're just like, I'm painting strokes, I'm not really thinking about it. And that's I love doing that as exercises. It kind of just gets your brain flowing. But you see some people's work like a Jackson Pollock or something like that, right? Where there's intention, and that's the point of the work is like there's intention, but there's also variation that happens by just throwing the paint, and you can't control where the paint goes, right? And I think that's really unique because you're like controlling, it's like controlled chaos, right? Like, where you're like, I can control a little bit, but not, and so for me, I do like painting very controlled. I'm a more clean type of painter. But occasionally like I'll mess with some abstract and just to like, even if it's just for me, just kind of let it go. Don't be so controlling over it. Let the piece breathe and like do its own thing.
That's where I feel like as an artist, you have to build relationships with things. I feel like, as artists, you're an interpreter. And in order to draw good flowers, I tell people, go build a relationship with flowers.
Go look at flowers.
Just pulling up references on Google, you'll find beautiful photos. That's great. But go into a garden. Go the flower that you want. Go find that flower. Walk with that flower, or just be sitting. Like build that relationship and study that flower. Yeah. Like,
does that flower give you a feeling? And not just an image, right? And I think that's something I've been trying to tap into more is like, does this work convey a feeling? Does it make me feel something? And that's all like, you know, and the more honest I am with it, the more I think the work gets better. And like with like my goddesses, you know, like I like for them to convey the feeling of like movement and like elegance and etherealness, you know, whatever. And it's hard to convey that in a still image sometimes, because you're like, all right, like, is this, because I can think of it as an animated, you know, flow or whatever, but to get the right shapes to convey flow while it's still, it's tough. But that's why I like the challenge of it.
Problem solving.
It's like cool, like this feeling makes it, you know, I don't know, it just gives it like a certain like gravitas or whatever. And when I've had people like come up, you know, for projects and stuff, and I see, you know, kids like take photos, like that's like the favorite thing is seeing anybody, you know, but especially like when I see like the youth take photos or like be hyped about the piece. I'm like, that's because I'm a big kid at heart, you know, and like I know what I would like if I had saw someone painting and like it was like a cool goddess or like a superhero or something in my eyes, like that. I would love that, right?
Be stoked, yeah.
And so like that's what I try to just, you know, convey in the work and try to, you know, just inspire people. Like, you know, not to be like, oh, I'm inspiring, but like, but just naturally, hey, if this speaks to you, great, I love it. If it doesn't, also great. Like that's part of art. You know, it's all subjective, obviously. And so I think that's our job, is to convey different types of feelings for people, whether or not they're like they know that they were going to feel that or not. You know, like sometimes people don't expect it. You know, I've had women like reach out to me like, hey, like thank you so much for painting women. Like, you know, you do it in such a, you know, not to like brag, you know, not bragging or nothing, but they're like, oh, you're doing it in such like a way that's not like, you know, through a male gaze or something like that. And I'm like, I mean, it still is, 'cause I think they're beautiful, but like I try to be respectful. Try to choose.
You feel that
like powerful imagery and like regal imagery, kind of, you know, and like I hope that it's like positive, you know, on people and inclusive, you know. So
definitely,
it's a tough, because I think again we're always learning, but I think the further you go, the more clear it gets.
For sure.
So, yeah, I think so.
Before we get out of here, what can we have the people looking forward to? What are you working on now?
Some murals coming up this summer.
Yeah.
We got some city murals in SF.
Public or private?
Almost all of the next ones are public.
Nice.
I think some later this year might be private, and I like private murals, but they're like, oh man, I want people to see this too. You know, so this, I'm like, yeah, I charge more for those.
Private murals are great because you know, like there's no weathering, there's no vandalism, you know, but public murals is just like, private murals are good because you're like, the office or these 10 people or this, you know, network is gonna see it, but
because you're like, oh man, I want people to see this, but in that I try to be like, well, at least this is more like not inclusive, but it's more intimate with the people that are there, you know, right? Like they're gonna see this every day. Yeah, you know, the one I just did in the office, they're like, man, I get like my desk looks at this every day. I'm like, well, I hope you enjoy it too, like, you know, at least. But I got, you know, murals coming up. Hopefully some, you know, some brand projects. I think we're doing Modelo again next month.
Okay.
So yeah, next, I just got the word, like not the word, but I just
how's
got
that working with Modelo?
It was cool. Like it's you know, it's a little stressful because it is like a corporate. It's definitely more corporate, but I like that experience because keeps you sharp, and also it lets you learn. Okay, this is how professionals do it. It's not just like, hey man, we have an agreement. Paint the wall, I'll pay you. It's like, okay, well, when are you gonna pay me?
They got brand colors. They got, they want.
It's very specific and very like, you can't include this, you can't include that. You could only do this, right? And it's a little different, but like I think the experience is cool. So that's coming up. Hopefully, we got some more. You know, I'm trying to work on more personal work too, because like again, I didn't have any paintings to bring today, and because I'm like, I work at the studio, and I'm like, okay, I have a couple days to work on stuff, and it's back to another, which I'm grateful.
What are you working on personally for you? Are the pieces you're working on now personal pieces or?
Yeah, they're just because like all the pieces I did like the last couple of years were like commissions. Was again grateful for it, but also it's like, damn, I want some stuff to like have in my studio, you know, just to.
What are you working on for yourself? When Matley Herd paints for himself, what is he painting?
Right now it's like some goddess pieces, just because I want to kind of flesh out the style and get better at interpreting them. But also like I'm trying to work on more character stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like painting people in like the cool jackets and stuff like that. You know,
Yeah, no, your
futuristic.
characters are amazing. The ones
Thank
at
you.
Mexicali with the puff jackets are cool. The
Thank
one
you.
over there, Bayview, next to the box shop.
That one.
And
That
one
was a
was
cool.
yeah.
That was a cool experience because that was in Hunters Point.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're supposed to wrap up, but it was in Hunters Point. That it was one of the talking to the owner Bob. He'd been running that store for like 30, almost 40 years. He's one of the last like black-owned liquor stores in all of San Francisco, like the last 2 or 3 apparently. That's what he said. I'm not sure, but that's what he said. He's like, I've been working this since like '74 or something like that, right? And he saw all the work going up at the box shop, and he was like, oh, I want something. And I was like, all right. And then Charlie, referred me to him. I was like, cool. And I talked to him, super cool. Heard like about his family history. And and if you go in there, he's one of those like OGs that just will talk. He'll talk to you
the whole history of Hunters
These
Point.
are my kids.
Bayview.
They got married over here. He just like tell you the whole lineage.
Love it.
And so when I heard about that, it made me think about like the movie because I love film, The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Okay.
And I love that film.
Yeah.
And so the character I painted just like a black man portrait. And I gave him a red beanie just to signify the red beanie that the character wore in that movie. And a lady that lived, because they shot that movie in that area, like a few blocks down.
Oh, I didn't realize. It was
Hunters Point. And the lady where they shot in front of her house, she was the only person, I didn't say it, but she was the only person that was like, did you pay his beanie for, and I forget the character's name, Jimmy or something like, I think that might be his real name. But the guy who's in that movie is actually a guy from SF. He's not like, then.
I remember when they were promoting for that movie and asked us to do something. It didn't work out, but I remember seeing the film and him like skating down that long.
Yeah, that movie's so cool. And it's such a good like tale about San Francisco and unfortunately just people of color getting pushed out. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that was a cool experience to like give him something that he appreciates and the neighborhood appreciates, and then also have that like callback. But that was the one where I started doing the doodle grid, and because Bob, he's like a legend over there. You don't mess, no one. It's like they call it, like Switzerland. Like there's like, hey, this is and nothing's happening over here, right? So I started painting it, and he was not there that day because they're like, hey, Bob knows you're coming. He just had to go to just start painting. I'm like, all right, cool. I started painting. People started like, hey, bro, what you doing? Well, and I was like, oh, hold on. Like, bro, what you doing? I was like, hey, I got permission from Bob knows I'm here. And I was kind of like, sketched out a little bit. But then again, a couple days go by, the piece starts forming. Those same dudes were like, hey, bro, that shit looks clean, bro. And I was like, hey, thank you. Like, cool.
They were coming back.
No, yeah, they were like, hey, we're going to see what he's doing. So that was cool. But yeah, man, I'm excited to just keep working, keep getting better. That's always my goal and focus is just like, how do I get better? How do I be a more proficient professional artist? I'm just learning as I go, and so
that's the game. That's the name.
The journey's always happening. And
man. Yeah. Shout out to Charlie over at the box shop as well too. I think we got our pieces right next to each other.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think me, you, Agana.
Me, you, and DJ Agana. That's right. That was a special moment, and I was really glad that we were able to. Yeah, I was able to show up and just be able to paint. It was fun. Have a fun day out in the.
I wish I painted something better because I was not ready. I wasn't prepared for that at all. And I was like, this is some abstract stuff. I did some abstract. And I was like, damn, Natty came with the face. He came with the purple face. And I was like, damn, I should have done something, man. I was like,
and I was still just playing around with cans. I was like, let me just bring some cans because I was like, this will go faster. I wasn't trying to be there too long. But
yeah, but it was fun. Like stuff like that is like, yo, if I come out, we're actually this next week. Speaking of Ghana, we're doing like a 5-6 artist thing at some night market that's happening in West Oakland.
Oh, nice.
Next week. I don't have all the details yet, but
keep me posted. I would definitely.
Yeah.
I know she was out of the country for a minute, or maybe she's just posting old footage. But
yeah,
we're still trying to get Ghana down here. She said she was starting a podcast of her own. I referred Podmasters, but
that'd be cool.
DJ Ghana, if you're listening, we're ready for you. We're ready. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up here with the one and only Matley Herd. It has been an absolute pleasure. He's given us all the info, all the spiel on how you too can be a successful professional artist. So
semi-successful, but
put in the homework. He's already doing it. So it's always a journey. And I think that's the main takeaway from this episode is that success is in the eye of the beholder, and you have to see yourself successful before you even begin the journey, or you're not going to make it. So when you do reach that level of whatever your goal is, being a millionaire, having a public piece of artwork out in the world, you know, you're satisfied, but also knowing that, you know, it's a constant graduation and elevation to this thing. So thank you all for tuning in to the Urban Artist Talk, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Peace.
Give me the paint, give me the chalk, give me the urban artist talk. Conversations from the heart, from the start we set apart. Art a la carte. Now check it.